Sticking with crypto regulation for our main story, I spoke with Congressman Sam Liccardo, a member of the House Financial Services Committee, about the Genius Act becoming law here in the U.S. and what's in focus now that the House passed 3 crypto-related bills last week. Crypto Week on Capitol Hill wrapped up last week with a legislative win for the digital asset industry as President Trump signed the Genius Act stablecoin regulation bill into law late Friday afternoon. Of course, there was some drama in D.C. throughout the week, but ultimately the House passed 3 crypto-related bills, including the Genius Act, on Thursday by a vote of 308 to 122. That came after Senate approval back in June. So you were one of the Democratic congressmen that voted yes for the Genius Act. How would you rate how Crypto Week went? What's your reaction to the fact that now stablecoins are in fact regulated here in the U.S.?
Well, I think it's a positive step forward. Stablecoin is a very important part of the industry and one with the most obvious use cases. We know that stablecoin is increasingly enabling millions of folks to be able to engage in financial transactions with lower fees, with less latency and time delay. It may be helping in developing countries, for example, and dampening inflationary impacts. And it really ensures the primacy of the dollar, as we know that other countries are issuing their own stablecoin. So it's important, and it's important that we have clear rules of the road. And I think the Genius Act is certainly a good step forward. I was an original co-sponsor of the bill that was brought into the House by Congressman Style.
Was there a point last week during Crypto Week that you thought we might not see developments for crypto regulation here in the U.S.? Given you were on the inside, what was sentiment like on Capitol Hill last week?
Well, there were a lot of swirling sentiments. I mentioned I certainly supported the stablecoin bill. I didn't support the larger package, which was what we call a market structure bill, the Clarity Act, because there was still a lot, of issues that we're all trying to work out. And frankly, I didn't believe the bill really included critical protections we needed for consumers. And so, as you can imagine, there were a lot of phone calls coming in from industry, certainly lots of lobbyists on the Hill. That's the way it works up here. And ultimately, we still have opportunity with that larger package. It's going to go to the Senate, and hopefully will be a better bill when it comes back.
And we'll talk more about the Clarity Act in just a bit. But now that the Genius Act was signed into law, what do you think changes for the crypto industry? Do you think we will see more stable coins come to market now that there is a federal framework? I mean, last week during an earnings call, JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon said the bank will get involved in stable coins even though he doesn't get the appeal. Citigroup and Bank of America executives have also said they would get involved in the stablecoin space. What do you think happens now?
Yes, I think exactly as you described. I think we're going to see more traditional financial institutions getting involved in stablecoin. I think that's good. That's a good thing for the market. We want more competition, and particularly from established brands that have reputations to protect. That means we're going to have good actors in this space. But look, there's a lot of innovation happening here, and it's going to happen both from small companies as well as from the large banks.
What's the next crypto-related legislative priority for you? I mean, I know you mentioned the way it is right now, you're not all for the Clarity Act, which is focused on creating rules of the road for crypto. That passed the House. It moves on to the Senate. You're hoping for more debate. Are you optimistic we will also see that piece of legislation become law? And if so, what will change for crypto and what needs to change in the Clarity Act for you to be confident that it will be a good market structure package?
Well, I think the Clarity Act certainly sensibly establishes a basic framework for regulation that's important. And they managed to get a lot of Democratic votes on it. So that shows a lot of momentum. I think there are going to be some challenges in the Senate, given obviously the structure of the filibuster and so forth. And what we've heard from many senators, a lot of concerns, for example, about the lack of any regulation or prohibition over the president and his involvement in cryptocurrency markets. So I expect there's going to be some more headwinds. I'd like to think that there are some small changes we could implement in the bill that could help both secure support and to make this a better bill. And most importantly, I think to focus on the one corner of the cryptocurrency or crypto market that has the most fraud, the most crime, the most theft, the most market money laundering, and that is decentralized protocols. We have right now a bill that regulates the centralized platforms, the exchanges, but exempts and largely precludes any regulation at all of that corner of the market, decentralized finance protocols, where people can trade peer-to-peer without any kind of intermediary. I think that's particularly problematic because what we know about those decentralized or DeFi protocols is that while it's only a fraction of the transactions today, that fraction's growing a lot each year. And within a couple of years, that could be the majority of transactions we see in crypto, all happening on protocols that are entirely unregulated. And we know from lots of studies, lots of analyses, that exactly is where the fraud, the money laundering, the crime is happening.
And expanding on that, back in June, some House Democrats already sounded the alarm on the Clarity Act. Experts warned that the bill contains loopholes that could allow traditional finance firms to evade regulation. And I know you were a bit concerned about the bill's, quote, hands-off approach to certain crypto markets, particularly DeFi, as you just mentioned. Have those concerns been addressed at all since then? Where does all of that stand right now with the Clarity Act that the House passed last week?
No, I don't think it really addresses those concerns in DeFi. And, look, this is a little bit like launching a global naval strategy and then putting all of your ships in Lake Erie. You've got to pay attention to where the fraud is, where the crime is. And unfortunately, the bill doesn't do that. There's some other provisions that could use some improvement as well, particularly some changes to the stablecoin bill that were enacted through this Clarity Act, for example, to allow for commodities to be a backstop or a reserve currency, reserve for stablecoin. That is going to create some challenges, I think, with systemic risk as well. And so I think there's some other changes that need to be put in place to ensure, for example, we're not seeing a lot of evasion around securities laws for companies that want to issue crypto as essentially a way of raising money. There's some changes I think that the Senate can put in place. It'll make this a much better bill.
Now, I spoke with Coinbase's chief legal officer last week, and he said there are still outstanding important questions regarding crypto policy that are not addressed in the bills that the House passed last week. An example he brought up, crypto tax policy. Is this something that's on your radar? Is there anything related to crypto that you're currently focused on or working on?
So that particular issue I know is an important one. We have not delved into it through the negotiations on this legislation. It will probably move through a different committee, that is Ways and Means, and they'll be tackling it primarily, but I expect we'll be engaged. Where I expect to stay engaged is around making sure that what we see coming out of the Senate is a bill that fills some of the gaps in the Clarity Act. And I think it's going to be very important for us to address what's happening in the DeFi world and ensuring that we don't have large gaping exemptions from securities laws for folks who are using crypto essentially as their means of raising money for corporations.
Now, some House Democrats chose their own nickname for last week, calling it Anti-Crypto Corruption Week. House Financial Services Committee ranking member Maxine Waters and other committee Democrats claimed the Genius and Clarity Acts give the president the green light to continue crypto dealings in his name. Now, back in February, you introduced a bill to ban top government officials, including the president, from making money by issuing meme coins. What's the latest with that bill?
Yeah, the bill actually goes a bit further than that, actually prohibits any of us from getting involved in any kind of issuance of securities, commodities, or any digital asset. And as you might have expected, got lots of support from lots of Democrats and no support on the other side of the aisle. So no, that bill's not likely to go anywhere for a long time. But I agree with the basic sentiment. We should be having these prohibitions. Those prohibitions were never going to get into this legislation. And even if we had perfect language in the Clarity Act, for example, we don't have an attorney general that would ever prosecute any member of this administration for engaging in this kind of corruption. So I don't pretend that somehow or another, by getting this language right, we'd suddenly see a stop to this illicit activity. I suspect that Donald Trump's sons would continue to do whatever they're doing with World Liberty Financial, et cetera. And so it was not an issue for me in terms of how I supported the bill or not. we need sensible regulation. We need to put guardrails in place.